Here we are on beautiful Fort Lauderdale Beach again, and today I'd like to talk about money pits. And I define a money pit as any yacht that has effectively reached the end of its useful life, and every time you go out, something new breaks. And this is where the expression boat, B-O-A-T, break out another $1,000 comes from, because every time you go out is something else breaks, and that money just keeps flowing out of your bank account continuously. And but it's not the money flowing out continuously that is the real big problem. And it's not even your time dealing with the endless repairs that just never stop. It's something else. And what is that? What that is the unreliability of money pits. And unreliability leads to an unsafe boat. So if you're out in a storm and you're sailing along a windward shore over there, a leeward shore where, and it's blowing 30, 35, and you lose maybe an engine or two or your rig, and then now all of a sudden you're gonna drift onto the rocks because you can't get off of that leeward shore. Well, you could have a loss of life. And this is the reason why charter companies sell their yachts in years 5 and 6, and that's because they know that the yacht is nearing the end of its useful life. It still has a few years left before it turns into a total money pit, so they can get a decent resale price, but they want to get rid of it as fast as they can. Believe me, I own a charter company. I've been in this business 30 years, and I know this is what they want to do. So it's the unsafeness about these boats. Now, all catamarans will turn into a money pit by a certain age. So what is that age? Well, it differs between the different makes and models because there are different levels of quality of the build. And if you give me a call sometime, I can brief you on what I think are the different levels of build quality and how long they last before they turn into money pits. But as a very general rule, by year 10 they're there. they're ready for a major refit. And as they get even older than that, it's going to require more and more money to get that boat safe and reliable again. And a lot of people come to me and they call me up and they say something like, "Oh man, I see this big Leopard 46 or Lagoon 440, and oh man, it's so cheap. We gotta go look at this." And we spend hours and hours and days and money traveling around looking at these things, and but what they don't realize is that it could take $50,000 or $60,000 to just make it insurable and safe. It could even go to $100,000 or more. And so they're not thinking about this. And I've learned these lessons the hard way because I've owned 48 boats and yachts now. Some of them went into my charter company, which is right down the beach there in Miami. And so I've made some expensive mistakes and learned this the hard way. So I'm trying to convey the fact that these boats, these money pits, are not worth the time and trouble. Now, 20 years ago, it was possible to buy a money pit, do it yourself, get the boat back up to the safe level. But now, because systems have become more proprietary, more complex, some engines you got to plug in a computer just to figure out what the heck's wrong with it. It's gotten more complicated than it was before, and it's harder to do it yourself. So, like, why does this happen? Why do boats turn into money pits? Well, we have, this salt water over here is very corrosive, and there's salt in the air, and that salt gets into your electrical system, and on exposed connections and wires, it just tears it apart. And so sometimes we'll see on an old money pit, and all of a sudden all the lights on one side of the boat won't work, and then we call the marine electrician in here. He goes and checks it out, and he goes, let's see. Well, I got to tell you, you got to rewire this whole boat. Okay, how much does that cost? Well, on a 45-foot cat, $40,000 to $50,000. Okay, now that's just one unpleasant surprise you can get. Sometimes it's the rigging issue. Sometimes it's the sail drive. Sometimes it's the engines. A couple of new sail drives, just the drive part of the engines, to replace them new, and they usually have a useful life of between 5 and 7 years. You know how much that is? 20 grand. Okay? And so people aren't thinking about this. Other things that cause yachts to turn into money pits are the humid atmosphere that they live in. It's humid out here, and so on the interior of the boat, this promotes the growth of mold and mildew in areas that you can't get to, like between the hull and the liner. And once you get mold take root, it's very difficult to get out of there. And some people are really allergic to these things, and it's a toxic boat. Caulking around the hatches and the windows with age, especially by age 10, that caulking, it dries up and it shrinks, and it causes leaks. Now, leaks can be fatal to an electrical system, and it causes all kinds of problems. It promotes the growth of mildew and mold, and it's just a big mess. It's like getting cancer, because it just wrecks the whole boat. All right? The tropical sun can really damage the Lexan in the windows and destroy the finish. And then there are owners who defer maintenance. Like, they may run into some financial problems, and then they go, well, why don't we skip this expensive maintenance for a year, Let's defer that and save the money. We know we're going to sell the boat anyway. Well, when they do things like this, and you don't always know that they're doing this accelerates the date by which the yacht becomes a money pit. So, we always want to look for certain things that tell us whether there was a lapse in some maintenance, and I can show you how we do that. Okay, now another problem with money pits is sometimes they cannot be insured, and so when your surveyor writes his report at the end, there's usually a list of defects. They're usually categorized A, B, and C. The A levels affect safety and navigation, and so the surveyor will say, this boat is not insurable until you fix these items. And also another thing about money pits is lenders. Many of them now in the U.S., they won't touch boats over 10 years old. They don't want to deal with them. They know all about the perils of money pits. So, this on the resale market negatively affects the number of potential buyers for your boat when you go to resell it. And, whenever I buy a boat, after I've owned 48 of them, I always think about my exit strategy when I'm buying, because if you buy it right, when you go to exit out, it's easy. But you got to think about it when you're in the buying process. Another thing about money pits is, and a lot of people say, oh yeah, I can deal with repairs, I'm handy, I've fixed up some houses and cars and things like that. Let me just say, it's very difficult to accurately estimate repairs, because in many cases you must take apart the equipment or components just to know what the problem is. And so oftentimes when you get estimates, like to redo a sail drive or rebuild an engine or do this or that, the contractor will say, oh yeah, that'll be $10,000. And so they'll get started, they'll get halfway through it, and then they come to you and they go, uh-oh, I didn't realize this was as complex and deeply affected as I thought, and so now it's going to cost double that. And then you're going to be mad and you're going to want to get rid of him, but no, you can't, because now he has a mechanic's lien on the boat and he has all your parts back in his shop that he's holding hostage until you pay him. And then you're still going to have to pay somebody else to remedy those defects. So this is just part and parcel of the reality of dealing with these fixer-uppers, and these contractors protect themselves with their contracts, and so forget suing them. All right, so now another reason to forget about these old money pits is that newer yachts, every newer generation, the interior space planners and the designers and the architects come up with much better solutions. And so for example, I say we're in the 4th generation of catamarans today, and the previous generations didn't give you as much usable interior space. And liveaboards, people that live on boats for long periods of time, that really experience the reality of living on boats, they all tell me the same thing. The number one most important thing, more than everything else, more than speed under sail, more than sleek looking boat, because I just hate those boxy lagoons, more than anything, it's maximum usable interior space is the paramount feature that you want when you live on a boat. And so these subsequent generations that we have now do that much better. They've raised the freeboard, they've widened the hulls, especially aft, doesn't affect the sailing speed as much. They've given you bigger salons. This is what liveaboards want. They tell me over and over. And so you get this in the newer generations. So like, people come to me and say, oh man, look at this Leopard 47, this old model, from 15, 20 years ago. Look how big it is and how cheap. Well, what they don't get is that a newer 4th generation boat, a Lagoon 400, probably has as much, if not more, room in the interior and to store your stuff away and not live in clutter than this older, larger boat. So you don't necessarily need as large of a cat as you think. So remember, like a 40-foot Lagoon, for example, or Leopard, has almost as much, if not more, room than a 50 to 55-foot monohull. So a lot of newbies don't understand that you may not need as big of a catamaran as you think. So you can look at the smaller ones and get by just fine with them. So what's the solution to all this? Well, what I've found is that what you need to do is set a budget, and if you come with me, you come down here to Fort Lauderdale, look at boats with me for a day. I'll show you the bad and the good about every different model, and by the end of the day, you usually have narrowed it down to 1 or 2 models that you take that work for you, and then it's easy because I know how to find the best deals in the world. And you know, if you buy it right, you can sell it right. And I explain how to do that in other videos. So the way to a happy catamaran owner's life is to get the newest catamaran that fits your budget, even if you have to go to a shorter length overall. And I can, you know, you just tell me the budget and I can tell you what's going to fit the best. So buy it right, you'll be a happy camper. So give me a call, send me a text, send me an email. Just go to my website, largecatamarantsforsale.com. I'll send you a copy of my report that I've been working on for 30 years called Insider Secrets to Buying Catamarans. It'll give you tips about how to buy right, how to sell right, where to find the best deals, and I look forward to working with you. So smooth sailing. Talk to you later.